Attention seniors, if you get a letter from Social Security saying you owe them money, do not pay it back without watching this first. Last month, a 72-year-old woman named Dorothy from Tucson, Arizona, opened her mail and found a letter demanding $8,347. She had no idea this was coming and thought she'd done something terribly wrong. Her hands shook as she read the letter 3 times, trying to understand what happened. She sat at her kitchen table for 2 hours, unable to move, wondering how she'd pay back that much money. Before I show you how to handle this, quick question: are you subscribed to this channel? Because last month over 3,000 people told me they missed a video that could have saved them thousands of dollars. Don't let that be you. Hit the subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to share is time sensitive. If you're not subscribed, YouTube won't show you my next urgent update and you could miss something critical. Let me tell you about Robert. He is 74 years old and lives in Jacksonville, Florida. Robert worked for the post office for 42 years and retired in 2018 with full Social Security benefits. He'd been getting the same amount deposited every month for 6 years without any problems. Then in September 2024, he got a letter saying Social Security had overpaid him by $12,400 and he needed to pay it all back within 60 days. Robert opened that letter on a Tuesday morning after his doctor's appointment. The letter said they'd been paying him too much since 2019 and they just discovered the error. His heart started pounding and he felt dizzy reading those numbers. He called his daughter immediately, his voice cracking as he tried to explain what the letter said. That night he couldn't sleep, lying awake doing math in his head, wondering where he'd get $12,400. The next morning he called Social Security and waited on hold for 2 hours and 20 minutes. When he finally got through, the representative told him the overpayment was correct and he had to pay it back. She said they could set up a payment plan or take it all from his future checks. Robert asked why this happened, and she said sometimes their system makes calculation errors that take years to find. The representative told him if he didn't respond by November 15, 2024, they'd automatically start withholding his entire monthly check. Robert was getting $2,100 a month, and his rent alone was $1,400. He would lose his apartment if they took his whole check, and he had nowhere else to go. Robert felt completely trapped and didn't know what to do. He went to a free legal aid clinic in his neighborhood and met with a paralegal who knew about Social Security overpayments. She told him something he'd never heard before. He could appeal the overpayment and request a waiver. The paralegal helped him file Form SSA 632 requesting a waiver of the overpayment. She also filed Form SSA 561 to appeal the overpayment determination itself. Within 3 weeks, Social Security stopped all collection efforts while they reviewed his case. It took 4 months, but in January 2025, Robert got a letter saying his waiver was approved. Social Security agreed he wasn't at fault for the overpayment and collecting it would cause him financial hardship. He didn't have to pay back a single dollar of that $12,400. When Robert called to thank the paralegal, he told her he'd been having panic attacks for months, thinking he'd end up homeless. Now he tells everyone he knows about the waiver option because most people have no idea it exists. Here's what makes me angry about this situation. Social Security sends out these overpayment notices to hundreds of thousands of people every single year. The letters are confusing and threatening, and they make people feel like criminals who did something wrong. But in most cases, the senior didn't do anything wrong at all. Social Security made the mistake in their calculations, their systems, or their record keeping. Yet they're demanding ordinary people pay back thousands of dollars for errors they didn't cause. Let me tell you about Helen. She is 69 years old and lives in Des Moines, Iowa. Helen retired from teaching elementary school in 2020 after 38 years in the classroom. She started collecting Social Security at age 66 and also had a small teacher's pension from the state. Everything seemed fine until March 2025 when she got a letter saying she owed Social Security $6,190 due to something called the windfall elimination provision. Helen had never heard of the windfall elimination provision in her entire life. The letter said because she had a pension from work where she didn't pay Social Security taxes, her Social Security benefits should have been lower. They'd been paying her the wrong amount since 2022, and now she had to pay back 3 years of overpayments. Helen read that letter sitting in her car after getting her groceries, and she started crying right there in the parking lot. She'd been carefully budgeting her money and had only $4,200 in savings total. There was no possible way she could pay back $6,890 without wiping out her emergency fund and going into debt. Helen called Social Security that same afternoon, and the person she spoke to was not helpful at all. He told her the overpayment was valid and she could either pay it in full or they'd take $537 from her monthly check until it was paid off. That would leave her with only $100 a month to live on instead of her normal $1,637. Her mortgage payment was $890 a month, and her prescriptions were another $180. She wouldn't have enough left for food, utilities, gas, or anything else. The representative said those were her only two options, and then he ended the call. Helen spent the next week barely eating, sick with worry about what would happen. She went to her church and talked to her pastor, who connected her with a local attorney who does pro bono work for seniors. The attorney looked at Helen's case and immediately filed for a waiver. He explained that Social Security is supposed to tell people about the windfall elimination provision before they retire, but they often don't. He argued Helen had no way of knowing her benefit would be reduced and she'd already spent the money on normal living expenses. He also requested an appeal hearing to challenge whether the overpayment calculation was even correct in the first place. Social Security approved Helen's waiver in August 2025 after a 5-month review process. They agreed to forgive the entire $6,190 overpayment because Helen wasn't at fault and she couldn't afford to pay it back. Helen called the attorney sobbing with relief, saying she'd lost 15 pounds from stress during those 5 months. She told me last month that she wants every teacher in America to know about the windfall elimination provision before they retire. If she'd known about it earlier, she could have planned differently and avoided this nightmare completely. Quick question before we continue. What state are you in? I need you to comment your state name right now. The rules I'm covering change by state, and I read every single comment. Plus, your comment helps other people in your state find this video. Drop your state in the comments right now. Now listen carefully to this part. When you get a Social Security overpayment notice, you have rights that Social Security doesn't clearly explain in their letters. You have the right to appeal the overpayment if you think it's wrong. You have the right to request a waiver if you can't afford to pay it back. You have the right to request a lower payment plan if you can't get a waiver. And you have the right to request that they stop collecting while your appeal is being reviewed. Most people don't know any of this, and they just start paying whatever Social Security demands. Let me tell you about James. He is 71 years old and lives in Allentown, Pennsylvania. James retired from construction work in 2019 and started collecting Social Security disability benefits at age 65. He'd been injured on a job site and couldn't do physical labor anymore. In January 2025, he got a letter saying he'd been overpaid $1,500 because Social Security discovered he'd done some part-time consulting work in 2021 and 2022 that he didn't report. James had done some consulting work. That part was true. A former colleague paid him $8,000 total over 2 years to answer questions about project estimates and safety regulations. James didn't realize he was supposed to report that income to Social Security because it wasn't regular employment. He thought the reporting rules only applied to actual jobs with paychecks and taxes withheld. When he saw that $15,200 demand letter, his first thought was that he'd committed fraud and might go to jail. He was terrified and ashamed, thinking he'd done something criminal, even though it was an honest mistake. James didn't tell anyone about the letter for 2 weeks because he was embarrassed. Finally, he told his son, who immediately helped him search online for information about Social Security overpayments. They found out James should file an appeal and a waiver request right away. His son helped him fill out the forms, and they included a letter explaining exactly what happened with the consulting work. James wrote that he genuinely didn't know he was supposed to report it, and he would have if anyone had told him. They sent everything to Social Security by certified mail on February 3, 2025. Social Security sent James a letter in May 2025 partially approving his waiver. They agreed to forgive $9,800 of the overpayment because James made an honest mistake and didn't intentionally hide the income, but they said he still owed $5,400 for benefits he received during months when his earnings were too high. James didn't have $5,400, so he requested a payment plan of $150 per month instead of the $890 per month they originally wanted. Social Security approved the lower payment plan, and James is slowly paying it off. It's not perfect, but it's way better than losing $890 every single month, which would have destroyed his budget completely. Here's what they don't tell you. Social Security approves waiver requests more often than you'd think, especially when people weren't at fault for the overpayment. According to their own data, they approve full or partial waivers in about 70% of cases where people actually file the request. But most people never file for a waiver because they don't know it exists. They just accept the overpayment notice and start paying it back, even when they can't afford it. That's exactly what Social Security is counting on. Let me tell you about Patricia. She is 68 years old and lives in Sacramento, California. Patricia worked as a nurse for 40 years and retired in 2021 at age 64. She waited until age 67 to start collecting Social Security so her monthly benefit would be higher. She'd been getting $2,240 per month since September 2024 without any issues. Then in April 2025, she got an overpayment notice saying she owed $4,160 because of an error in how they calculated her retirement age. Patricia couldn't understand what the letter meant because she'd worked with a Social Security representative when she applied. The representative had reviewed everything and told her the amount she'd receive each month. Now they were saying that representative made a mistake and calculated her benefit wrong. Patricia was furious because this wasn't her error at all. She'd trusted Social Security to do the math correctly and paid them taxes her entire working life. Now they wanted her to pay for their employee's mistake, which seemed completely unfair and wrong. Patricia called Social Security and told the representative she wanted to appeal and request a waiver. The representative tried to talk her out of it, saying appeals take a long time and she'd be better off just setting up a payment plan. Patricia insisted, and the representative finally told her what forms to file. Patricia sent in Form SSA 632 for the waiver and Form SSA 561 for the appeal on April 28, 2025. She wrote a detailed letter explaining that she relied on Social Security's calculation and spent the money on normal living expenses like rent, food, and medical care. In September 2025, Social Security sent Patricia a decision letter approving her waiver completely. They agreed their employee had made the calculation error and Patricia had no way of knowing the amount was wrong. They forgave the entire $4,160 overpayment and adjusted her future benefits to the correct amount going forward. Patricia told me she almost didn't fight it because the representative on the phone made it sound hopeless. She's so glad she filed the waiver anyway because it saved her over $4,000. She wants everyone to know that Social Security representatives sometimes discourage people from filing appeals, but you should file anyway if you think you're right. If this information is helping you right now, I need you to do something. Hit the like button on this video. Here's why that matters. The more likes this gets, the more YouTube shows it to other people who need this information. It takes literally 2 seconds. Do it right now while you're thinking about it. Wait, this is important. If Social Security says you were overpaid, you typically have 60 days from the date on the letter to respond. If you don't respond within 60 days, they'll automatically start withholding money from your future Social Security checks. They can take your entire monthly check if the overpayment is large enough. That's why you can't ignore these letters or wait to deal with them later. You need to act within that 60-day window or you lose important rights. Let me tell you about Michael. He is 73 years old and lives in San Antonio, Texas. Michael is a veteran who served in the Army for 22 years and retired with a military pension. He also worked civilian jobs after the military and earned enough credits for Social Security. He started collecting Social Security at age 70 to get the maximum benefit amount. In July 2025, he got an overpayment notice for $7,650, saying they'd paid him too much because of his military pension. Michael was confused because he'd told Social Security about his military pension when he applied. He even brought his pension paperwork to the Social Security office and showed it to them. The representative at that time said everything looked fine and his pension wouldn't affect his Social Security. Now 5 years later, they were saying that representative was wrong. Michael felt betrayed because he'd done everything right and been completely honest about his income. He'd trusted Social Security to handle it correctly, and now they were demanding money back for their own mistake. Michael went to a veteran service organization in his area that helps with benefit issues. A counselor there told him this happens to veterans all the time because Social Security employees don't always understand military pensions. The counselor helped Michael file a waiver request and gather evidence that he'd disclosed his pension from the very beginning. They found a copy of the notes from his original Social Security appointment in 2020 that mentioned his military pension. They submitted everything to Social Security with a cover letter pointing out that Michael had been honest and relied on their employees' advice. Social Security denied Michael's waiver in November 2025. They said the overpayment was correct, and Michael should have known his benefit amount seemed too high. Michael was devastated because he'd been counting on that waiver approval, but the Veterans Counselor didn't give up. He helped Michael request a hearing before an administrative law judge to appeal the waiver denial. That hearing is scheduled for March 2026, and the counselor believes they have a strong case. In the meantime, Social Security agreed to pause all collection efforts until after the hearing. Michael is still fighting and hasn't paid back a single dollar yet. This is where it gets serious. Even if Social Security denies your waiver, you can appeal that denial. You can request a hearing before a judge who will look at your case independently. Judges overturn Social Security's decisions all the time when the evidence shows the person wasn't at fault. But you have to keep fighting and not give up after the first denial. Most people don't know they can appeal a waiver denial, so they just accept it and start paying. Here's what makes this worse. Social Security can go back 3 years to collect overpayments in most cases. But if they think you committed fraud or you're still getting benefits, they can go back even further. I've seen cases where they demanded repayment of overpayments from 5 or 6 years earlier. By that time, the person has already spent that money on rent, food, medicine, and bills. They don't have thousands of dollars sitting around to pay back. That's why the waiver option is so critical for most people. Now here's the good news. You don't need a lawyer to file a waiver request or appeal. You can do it yourself using Social Security's forms. Form SSA 632 is the request for waiver of overpayment recovery. Form SSA 561 is the request for reconsideration if you want to appeal the overpayment itself. Both forms are available on Social Security's website at ssa.gov, or you can get them at any Social Security office. You fill them out, explain your situation, and mail them to the address on your overpayment notice. Think about someone you know who needs to hear this. Your mom, your dad, your neighbor, your friend from church, someone who could lose money if they don't know what I just explained. Share this video with them right now. Copy the link, text it to them, email it, however you communicate. Do it now before you forget. This information is too important to keep to yourself. But here's the catch. When you fill out the waiver form, you need to prove 2 things. First, you need to show the overpayment wasn't your fault. That means you didn't cause it by lying, hiding information, or ignoring Social Security's rules. Second, you need to show that paying it back would cause you financial hardship or would be unfair. You prove hardship by showing your monthly income and expenses and demonstrating you can't afford the repayment. You prove unfairness by showing you relied on Social Security's information and spent the money already. Here's exactly what you need to do right now. I'm going to give you 5 steps. Each one is simple and specific. You don't have to do everything today, but you need to start with step 1 this week. Write these down or save this video. Ready? Let's go through them. Step 1. If you get a Social Security overpayment notice, do not panic and do not pay anything right away. Read the entire letter carefully and write down the amount they say you owe and the deadline to respond. The deadline is usually 60 days from the date printed on the letter, not the date you received it. Make a copy of the letter and keep the original in a safe place. You need this letter to fight the overpayment later. Do this the same day you get the letter so you don't lose track of the deadline. Step 2. Request your Social Security file immediately by filing a Freedom of Information Act request. You can do this online at ssa.gov by searching for Request Your Social Security Records, or you can call Social Security at 800-772-1213 and ask them to send your file. Your file contains all the notes and documents Social Security has about your benefits, including what you told them when you applied. This file can prove you gave them accurate information if they're blaming you for the overpayment. Request this within the first week after getting your overpayment notice, because it takes 4 to 6 weeks to receive it. Step 3. Gather evidence of your monthly income and expenses to prove financial hardship. Get your bank statements from the last 3 months showing what you spend on rent, utilities, food, medicine, and other necessities. Make a list of your monthly income from all sources, including Social Security, pensions, part-time work, and any other money coming in. Calculate how much you have left after paying all your bills each month. If the answer is 0 or negative, you have strong proof of financial hardship. Put all this information together within 2 weeks of getting your overpayment notice so you're ready to file your waiver request. Step 4. Fill out Form SSA 632 requesting a waiver of the overpayment. You can get this form at ssa.gov by searching Form SSA 632 or by calling 800-772-1213 and asking them to mail it to you. Fill it out completely and attach a letter explaining exactly what happened and why the overpayment wasn't your fault. Include copies of your bank statements and expense list to prove financial hardship. Mail everything by certified mail with return receipt to the address shown on your overpayment notice. Do this at least 2 weeks before your 60-day deadline to make sure it arrives on time. Step 5. If you want to appeal the overpayment itself because you think Social Security made a mistake, file Form SSA 561 at the same time you file the waiver. This form requests reconsideration of their decision that you were overpaid at all. You can argue the amount is wrong, the overpayment never happened, or Social Security is misinterpreting their own rules. Attach any evidence you have, like pay stubs, tax returns, or letters from Social Security showing what they told you originally. Send this by certified mail to the same address as your waiver request. Filing both forms together gives you 2 chances to win your case. Let me recap what we just covered. Social Security sends overpayment notices to hundreds of thousands of seniors every year demanding repayment of thousands of dollars. In most cases, the senior did nothing wrong, and Social Security made the error in their calculations or systems. You have the right to appeal the overpayment and request a waiver, but you must act within 60 days. Social Security approves waivers about 70% of the time when people actually file them. You now have information that could save you $5,000 to $15,000 or protect you from losing your entire monthly Social Security check. Don't waste it. Remember Dorothy from the beginning? After she filed a waiver request for that $8,347 overpayment, Social Security approved it completely within 4 months. She didn't have to pay back a single dollar. She called me last week and said fighting that overpayment was the best decision she made this year. You can do the exact same thing. The only difference between you and her is that she acted immediately. She didn't wait, didn't ignore the letter, and didn't just accept what Social Security told her. She fought back and won. If this video helped you, here's what I need you to do. First, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next urgent update. Second, share this with someone you care about, someone who needs this information. Third, leave a comment telling me your state or your situation. I read every comment and I try to respond to as many as possible. Your comment also helps other people find this video. Do all 3 things right now before you click away and forget. One more thing. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not legal advice, financial advice, tax advice, or medical advice. I'm sharing general information, but every situation is different and laws vary by state. Before you make any decisions based on what you heard here, please consult with licensed professionals like attorneys, CPAs, financial advisors, or doctors who can look at your specific situation. What works for one person may not work for another.